Hey everyone, in this video we're going to go through and set up the Cisco archive within your Cisco iOS devices. We're going to push that out with Ansible playbook utilizing the iOS config module. It's a very popular module. If you come out to Google as always and just say Ansible Cisco iOS and click on the documentation. Come down here, you'll see the iOS config module. If you click on that, it'll run you through all the information that you need on how to utilize the settings, and then of course towards the bottom you'll have examples of how to run the iOS config against devices. Okay, again, our topology, Ansible server up here in the headquarters, and we're going to be modifying our site configurations. So we've already done site 400 with the archive. I'm going to show you just kind of the hierarchy of how the Ansible iOS config module works. So in the documentation you'll see some of the information here. I chose the archive because it does have parents, a couple of different parents, and you'll see here there will be some configs will ask for parents, like for what interfaces you're going to be using, right? So the interfaces are the parents. The children then are, in this example here, IP helper addresses. Up here we're setting a description and a IP address on the parent, which is the interface Ethernet 1. So the archive has a couple. I'm going to run through just a little bit on how that looks. So let's go over to our terminal. We're on site 400 on the console. Okay, let's get some clear screen here. If we shall run pipe section archive, we'll see archive is our parent, or one of our parents. The log config is another parent, and you'll see it steps down by space. So you got archive right up there on the line. Your next one down is your first child, which is log config. Log config is parent to these settings here, right? So archive is the parent for log config. It's also the parent for the path, maximum, and write memory, right? And then log config is our parent for all these here. So how do we utilize this information? So if we go into here, we're in our Ansible server, Ansible directory. List out the directory, and we'll go into our archive directory. So if we change directory to our O3 archive, we'll see we got the Ansible config file, our config, archive config.yaml, our host information. If you've watched our Ansible Vault video, this is where we're storing our username and password that we're sending to the devices, and then our host file. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our archive config. Okay, so currently site 400 has been configured already with the archive settings. We're going to move on and we're going to do site 300. What we're doing is we're deploying our archive config. Our vars files, our password files, our password information that we're going to pass to those devices are stored in our encrypted host info .yaml file. And then here's the tasks we're going to run. So initially we're going to set our main archive config, right? So our main archive config is our settings within the two top levels, or two parents. So we've got archive and our log config, right? If you remember from here, we've got archive and log config. So these here are the main settings that we're going to set. Again, we set our parents. Our parents are archive and log config. Everything under log config are then set up under our lines or our children, right? So we've got logging enabled, we've got logging persistent auto, we've got logging sizes of 1000, we've got notify syslog content type plain text, so we're going to pass information along to our syslog, and we're going to hide our keys. So anytime we type in a username or password or authentication for say NTP or routing peer, we're going to hide those from the syslog. We're not going to put those in plain text. The next play we have is the deploy local archive backup config, right? So that's the portion underneath the archive that is going to set up our ability to save our configuration to the local device. So every time we do a write mem, it's going to save our host name with this $H. So I've got these in quotations because we've got specialized characters in there. We're going to make sure that we put those in quotations. So our path is the /0 : $H for our host name. And then we're going to keep a maximum of 14 configs. Okay. So anytime we write mem, it's going to save that device output to the flash directory. And then down at the bottom, we always want to save our config if it's been modified. Okay, so exit out of that, write and quit. So we're getting ready to push that out to site 300. So let's go ahead and run that. We'll say Ansible playbook, archive, config.yaml. You can see it's getting ready to connect to those devices and start running that configuration. So it's completed the first portion and it's finishing up the second portion. And we want to save that configuration. Okay, it ran 3 tasks and 3 tasks had changed. So the successful on all 3 for the deployment of the main portion, deployment of the local archive backup, and then saving the running to startup. Okay, so if we go ahead and log on to one of those devices, -L, netops, 268.99.30 is our gateway 1 device out there. Password. There we go. If we show run pipe section archive, you'll see now we've got the archive configuration on that device. Very useful to have the archive on all of our Cisco iOS devices. Helps us maintain some continuity of for disaster recovery if something happens or if there's any configuration changes that are made. In fact, if we do show archive log config all, we'll see once we started the configuration and it started logging, we're seeing that, you know, netops logged on to VTY line 0 and it started making configuration changes to the device. So this is a quick way to go in and see, you know, if something's changed or if someone's made a change and taken an interface down or something along those lines. You can use this as a troubleshooting tool to go back in and have a look at the device. Who's made a change? Was it part of something that went wrong? Then if we do just a simple show archive, you can see we've got our flash Site 300 Gateway 1, puts a date stamp on it, and this is our very first config, right? That's our most recent. So if we were to write again and show archive, we can see now we have two configurations that are saved, right? Most recent is number 1. We can use that to roll back. We can use it to troubleshoot. We can go back and look at archived configurations to see what changes were made over time. We can do diffs against those configurations, all sorts of great things. But the main portion of this video is to get how you set up that Ansible playbook to push this out to your devices. So let's go ahead and exit out of there. Let's log into our Site 200 device and make sure that we do or do not have the archive configuration on our Gateway 1 device out at Site 200. So SSH netops to 192.168 99.20 netops, and we shall run pipe section archive. And you see we do not have the archive set on this device. So let's go ahead, exit out. We're back in the archive. Let's edit our archive config playbook. And we'll change our hosts from Site 300 to Site 200. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and run our playbook. Ansible playbook, archive configs.yaml, and we're going to run it against our Site 200 router and switch. And then we'll go back in, log in, and verify that it's been put on those two devices, or at least the gateway. Okay. Actually, let's just tab up. Go back to the gateway 2. Netops and show run pipe section archive. And you see we've got the archive configuration on that device now, just as it's set within our playbook. So we've tested it on a few different sites. Let's go ahead and push it out to everything. Or ensure it's pushed out to everything. So what we do there is we'll VI our archive config. We'll insert, and instead of just a site, we're going to say all hosts from our host file. Escape, write, and quit. Let's go ahead and clear the screen, and we'll say Ansible playbook archive config.yaml. And we're going to run it against all of our switches and routers within our topology that we're managing. So, and again, as we're pushing this out, something like this could be set up on a regular basis to where, once a week, once a month, however you deem, you can have this pushed out to everything to ensure that, every device has this configuration on it on a regular reoccurring timeline. So you add, remove devices from your host file. It'll go out and make sure that's set, the proper settings are set. So as you can see, we've gone through, we've pushed it out to all those devices. We're saving our backup now. You see we didn't have to save anything on site 200 or 300 or 400 because the device configuration had not changed. The archive was already on those devices. But for our site 100 and our headquarters site now has the archive configuration, and it's been saved to the device. So clear again one more time. Just take a look again, just the Ansible config file, the archive config, our host info file, and our host file. Let's go ahead, VI one more time, that archive config. Again, we're deploying the archive. Excuse me. Deploying the archive, we're deploying it to all hosts. We've got our vars file set to host_info. We then use our iOS config module to push our lines of configuration to their parents, archive and log config. We're going to match those exactly as they are written. Then we're going to deploy our local archive backup config, which is another set of configurations under the parent archive. So for our log config, our path that we're going to save our configs, anytime we write mem, and the maximum we're going to hold is 14 configurations. And then at the end, we just save the configuration. Okay, so as you can see, very useful module to push out configurations such as the archive. We'll be going over some others in further videos or in future videos. And yeah, so I hope this has been informative. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for more videos.